Good afternoon and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. Our weekly webinars aim to provide advice and share knowledge on key business topics and specialist areas. Our host today is BizSmart Select member Stu Avis from Audacious Creative Communications, and he's here to talk to us about brand designs and how the vital role colour and typography play in our communication. Before we start the webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen, and you can post any questions that you have for Stu and he will answer them all at the end of our session. Thanks again for joining us, and Stu, over to you.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Brand Designs. Click on that. Right, so on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see a panel, and it says you, your business, your understanding of your business, your values, your products, and your services. So on one side, there is you, and on the other side, there is your clients, your prospects, their buying power, and how they understand who you are and what you do. And the way that you come together is through communication. So you communicate to your audience, and hopefully they can communicate back to you. And typography and colour play a critical role in helping you communicate your core values. So much of kind of branding is about who you are and not what you do. And this is the third in a short series that we're doing on branding. And so the first one kind of really looked at 5 foundational principles that you can use to help grow your business. And the second one that we did a few months ago, that's actually how you can compete in quite a crowded market, including against much bigger organizations who may offer a similar kind of service to you. But a few people have asked me for something with a slightly more creative edge to it. So that is kind of what we're doing this afternoon. So this is kind of a route map. So this is the introduction. We're going to play a game in a minute. We're going to have a recap and then look at actually how colour and type can play very powerful roles in helping you communicate who you are. I'm hoping, if the technology works, to be reasonably interactive. So, and there may be opportunities for you to kind of type in answers to questions in your little browsers. So if you want to do that, then that would be great, and we can kind of see how you're doing on that. So we're going to play a game. We're going to play the old game of Guess Who. So I'm going to show you a very famous person, and it'd be great if the first person can let me know who it is. There's no prize, just really the kudos of being first past the post, really. So who is this? Okay, it's a bit of a silly question. Actually, we don't know who this is. Maybe you do. It'd be amazing if you did. But actually, what helps us recognize people? It's their facial features, isn't it? We recognize someone because of their hair color, their eye color, their nose shape, their chin shape, etc. And often you can think you know someone who's walking towards you, and then you realize that maybe their facial features just don't look quite right, and you realize actually it's not the person that you thought it was. And equally, you can see someone quite a way away and actually begin to recognize them, and they are the person you think it is. So again, kind of fingers on the buzzers. Who is this? So we're just going through. So here's some hair. Here's an eye, there's a nose, 2 eyes, mouth, you probably guessed it by now, chin, and it's Brad Pitt. So the reason we know it's Brad Pitt is because we can see, he's very familiar to us. And we see him on the big screen or our TVs or whatever. And those facial features are instantly recognizable. And it's the same with your logo. Actually, people will get an understanding of who you are just from looking at your logo. And type and color play a really powerful role in helping you communicate not just what you do, but who you are, your personality, your makeup, your values, your ethos, all those kind of things. So that's kind of really important. So we're now going to, what we're going to do is just going to recap on something that we looked at back in the very first webinar I did about a year ago. And this is kind of important for us to refresh and just kind of re-understand. The brand isn't a logo. It is not your identity. It's not your product or your service. Brand is how someone emotionally engages with who you are far more than what you do. It's how someone instinctively gets you and your business, or gets you and a product that you offer or a service that you offer. So brands are defined by people, not organizations. So it's what they say it is. So you can say that you're the best whatever printer in the world, but actually if other people, if your clients say something else, then it doesn't matter what you say you are. It's what matters is what they say you are. And that's kind of why word of mouth is so important, because actually we know we're on the right lines if we get positive word of mouth. But it also then works the other way, that if people say, oh, don't use them, they're awful, I wouldn't go to that restaurant, because actually, again, that's very influential. So organizations therefore can't create brands. So your sole role as a business owner is to enhance and sustain how people feel about who you are and what you do. And as I said already, one of the core ways that you can do this is actually through type and color. So there's a bit of theory on this, but we're going to play some more games in a minute. And it'd be really great if you can sort of, kind of type in who you think, and just kind of type in some answers. So before we do that, we're going to look at some colors actually. So different colors mean different things. So the dark blue, for instance, is strong, it's serious, respectable, it's trustworthy, used a lot by those in the financial sector. Yellow is an optimistic, it's creative, it's quite an emotionally strong colour, it's a confident colour. Purple, for instance, is a spiritual wear. If you think about bishops, they always wear purple. It's a spiritual colour, but it's quite sophisticated. It's a luxurious colour. It indicates quality and authenticity. And our two colours, the two greens, it's about creativity, but it's all about harmony and bringing balance to things as well, without wishing to sound too kind of Star Warsy. So these different colours mean different things, and there should be somewhere. I've uploaded a little PDF for you to download, and it's got this sheet on it, to help you kind of think through the colours that you use and what the colours that you use are communicating to your audience. So, whose colours, this is the game, whose colours are these? Any idea? Oh, sorry, already. It's okay, so it's McDonald's, okay? So, whose colours are these? Anyone got any suggestions? Okay, nothing coming through. It is FedEx. So the purple here indicates they're a serious, sophisticated, well-organized organization, company. And the orange denotes action, denotes communication, it denotes energy and dynamic. But actually, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but there is an arrow in this logo as well, and it's here. And that arrow, that use of white space, very clearly, very powerfully communicates taking something from A to B. They are a forward-moving, dynamic company. So the colours, let alone the typefaces themselves, actually communicate something very clear about the values of the organisation. So who uses just grey and white, basically? Apple, absolutely. Well, I knew Philip would get it. Okay, well done, Philip. Absolutely, Apple. It takes a brave company to be so secure in themselves that they don't need to use color, which is really interesting, actually. And they've taken minimalism to kind of a whole new level, and they do it very well. And obviously that then comes across in all their products and everything else. So there we go. Okay, whose colors are these? Nothing come through as yet. Well, you may be surprised to see that it's McDonald's. So they've kept the golden arches. They've kept that very vibrant, very dynamic yellow, because that's what people really identify with as McDonald's. But if you go back to the red that they've used, that's a kind of very bright, very cheery, very friendly, quite overtly hey kind of color. Whereas actually the green is more serious, but actually what they want to communicate is actually they're wanting to communicate their kind of eco credentials, for want of a better word, so they know where their beef comes from. They know the man who grows the potatoes. All their muffins are real eggs. They know the baker down the road, kind of thing. And so what they're trying to communicate here is something very different to the red. So it's very interesting to see actually how over the last few years that green has come more and more and more into play. And if you go into McDonald's restaurant, actually a much more earthy tones. There's kind of natural wood colours, and there's browns and there's greens as well. And again, it's just communicating what they want you to feel, about their brands. And last but not least, whose colours are these? If you haven't got it by now, something's badly wrong because it's ours. So I'm obviously not doing as good a job as I thought I was on our branding. But hey ho. But there we go. So I kind of talked a few moments ago about why we chose the two greens that we did and kind of balancing out with the grey. So we're going to go and move on to type now. Thank you, Philip. Kind of what so hopefully you kind of got the point that actually different colours communicate different values. And so one of the questions that you should be asking yourself is actually, well, what colours do my brand colours communicate? So what values am I communicating in the colours that I'm using? And it's the same with type, just different colours communicate core values. Typefaces can basically do the same thing. So I'm going to show you a range of typefaces. These are fairly simplified because there are kind of sort of sections within sections, really, categories within categories. But serif fonts, something more old school, so that denotes traditional values. There's a security, there's a loyalty about them. So anything like that, so Times New Roman, Baskerville, etc. That's a serif font, something more old school, traditional kind of font. So sans serif. So modern, if this is Arial, it's modern. Actually, this is Helvetica, I apologise. Modern, clean, it's unfussy, it's approachable. All these fonts, by the way, all these typefaces are actually the same size. So you should be able to see actually how they stand out from each other. So sans serif, it hasn't got any of those kind of swirls and little kind of bits that serif fonts have. Slab serif, some of my favourite fonts are slab serif. It's taking almost the best of both worlds. So it's a corporate font, but it's in a modern approach, but with traditional values. So it's very clear, it's very readable, it's quite unfussy, but there's extra detail in there as well, which is quite important. And some of my favourite kind of fonts are sort of slab serif. They're great to work with as a designer. Another kind of font is your script to a handwriting font. So that's about the personal touch, often a softer touch, or maybe even a feminine element to it too. So it's saying, actually, this is me. I care. This is my business. I want you to be really involved in this. And it's kind of a much less kind of corporate or less stuffy kind of a series of typefaces. And then the last one really is kind of block or display fonts. So they're strong, they're confident, they're bold. They kind of, they know who they are. They have a presence about them. And you can see just looking at your screen that actually the block and display font, which is actually this was the first font we ever used for our logo, stands out. It's much clearer than all the others, particularly the serif font, which kind of fades into the background. And that's its purpose. It is a very strong, confident, here, look at me kind of font, or typeface, should I say. So actually, different typefaces communicate very different things. So again, you kind of need to be asking the question, what sort of typefaces am I using, and what are they communicating to my audience? So what I'm going to do now is we're going to look at a real world example to show you some thinking that kind of went behind the logo creation, but also actually how typefaces can mean different things, even if we're using the same word. So the client is a yoga maverick. She's a yoga and health blogger and a yoga trainer. She wanted something that had an edge to it. She wanted to be quite unfussy, and she wanted a blog design to match. She wanted grey, so quite Apple in many ways, grey but with a hint of lime green somewhere. And what she wanted was a graffiti style logo. And that's an example of the one that she sent over that she really liked. Now, I instinctively, having spent some time with her, thought, I'm not sure that actually that graffiti style is right for you. But because it's what she had specifically requested, I kind of did what I don't normally do, and kind of sent her over a couple of suggestions. So I took the same font. I wanted something where I could put the word Mavericks under without it kind of looking too lost. A little bit of detail there with the sort of the green little strokes coming down. There's a slightly lighter version, which is grey. Is obviously light grey and dark grey. But it's interesting, that green for Mavericks is exactly the same. But you see how the dark green or the dark grey draws out the vibrancy of the green, whereas actually the green under the bottom one actually looks slightly more washed out, even though they're identical colours. So you can see actually even how putting two colours together actually can affect each other or affect how we view those colours. But anyway, so she didn't like those. I knew she wouldn't. So I then sent her over 7 kind of different graffiti style typefaces for her to have a look at. Are there any here that tick any boxes? The problem with graffiti style typefaces is actually most of them are unreadable. So those were the 7 that I kind of found that were most readable. And actually, she didn't like any of them, but I was pretty confident that she wouldn't. So I said, look, let me go back to my drawing board. I've got some suggestions outside of the kind of graffiti thing. So what I did is this was my starting point. I know yoga is about kind of holistic. It's about energy. It's about body, mind, spirit. About treating the whole person and kind of sensitive energy, all that kind of stuff. So I took the circle and the triangle, and they fit quite neatly into the word yoga. So that's kind of quite a good starting point for 10. Using color, using type that kind of all fits with that nice kind of big sort of round G and all that kind of stuff, but communicating some values about yoga as much as anything else, and then adding the word Mavericks. Now, this is my favorite of all the kind of concepts that I came up with in many ways, because I like that those are sketchy, so I kind of rough around the edges, kind of using Mavericks. But she wasn't hugely keen on that, although she liked it a lot better than she had so other options. This was another kind of thought process I had about sort of connecting the V and the A, because they work really well together. And there's that symmetry and kind of bringing everything together and the connectivity and all that sort of stuff. And then what I did is I then just sent her over a bunch of other kind of scripty typefaces. So still keeping with the kind of the calligraphic handwritten typeface. And then I then sent over some Mavericks things. So this is kind of what the final mood board looked like. So you've got your yogas, you've got your Mavericks, and you can see even in the top 3 Mavericks just how different they are and just what different values they're communicating. And it's the same with the yogas as well. And actually, she said that she liked 2 or 3 of these straight off the bat, but the one that she went for was this, because it was energetic, it was dynamic, it was active. She felt there's a real stylish kind of thing about it. But also the Mavericks was modern, it was structured, there was a bit of a non-conformity about it because it was a slightly distressed kind of typeface. But she liked the structure thing because of the stencil effect, really. But she felt it was slightly rebellious, kind of trying to draw out that Mavericks thing, that kind of on the edge. And she said in the green really helped it kind of stood out. And that was the logo that she kind of went for. So what I hope that you've kind of really just learned is actually different typefaces, even though we're rendering the same word, you can get very different meanings and very different values just through type and color. So there are kind of just 3 or 4 questions to end with, really. 1, what values are most important to you? What do you want your audience to feel when they see your logo? Do you want them to feel, well, how do you want them to feel? Does your logo, especially how you use type and color, communicate those values? Do you feel they do? Maybe ask a few people, actually, when you see my logo, what do you feel? Not what do you think, what do you feel? And actually, if you feel that actually they don't, then actually what action are you going to take to kind of remedy the situation? So that's it. My name is Juravis, Audacious Creative, designs that make a difference. If you've got any questions, then please do kind of put them up here. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Stu. Right, we've got some questions coming through to you now. The first one, what is the difference between typeface and font?
That's a brilliant question. I like that one. Okay, typeface is slightly complicated, but it isn't. A font is the actual file that you installed on your computer that generates that typeface. So Helvetica or Times is the typeface, but the font itself is the actual file that sits on your machine, that when you're typing something and then change the typeface, it's a little bit of the digital kind of sort of file really that sort of generates kind of the typeface on your screen. The next question is, are there any colors to avoid? That's a great question, actually. No, I think it's a simple answer. In terms of, there is no color that you shouldn't use, but you should only use colors that communicate what you want them to communicate in terms of your kind of brand values. So if you want to come across as serious and respectable and trustworthy, maybe don't use bright yellow, okay? But actually, if you want to come across as fun and energetic and vibrant, then by all means use kind of orange and green, and maybe don't use black. So actually, so in terms of colours to avoid, no, there's no colour that you can avoid particularly. But I also have to think about actually how they render out on screen and type and all that kind of stuff. There's another question here that's come in about tips on choosing the right typeface. Again, that's a tricky one. Your primary thing is it readable? Is it really, what does it look like when it's really big? What does it look like when it's small? Do I have to actually, what's my kind of word count if I was just going to generate a page of that for sort of testing? So it has to be readable. It also has to serve a purpose. So it communicates something about your brand primarily, but also actually it denotes something. So you might use a typeface that draws attention to something. So you might use a lighter font or a heavier font, just like you might use kind of bold to sort of draw attention to. You might use a typeface that draws attention to something. So think about sort of what you want to communicate, and then try to find a typeface that does that. Sorry. And how can I ensure consistency across all my communication streams? Again, that's another great one. Work with a designer who keeps all your fonts and your colors in one place. Ensure that whatever communication channel you're using, whether it's email, whether it's print, whether it's your website, that you're using the same fonts and the same colors. There's nothing worse than looking at a flyer that uses one set of typefaces and then looking at an email from someone like a marketing email that uses completely different typefaces. At least to try to get complementary things. And in colors, make sure that you know what your what the print values are, and what your digital, what your hex, your RGB values are. If you don't know what they mean, I'll have a chat with you and explain it. Ralph will let you know what we mean by that, as Philip will as well. So those are kind of the few questions that we've had in so far. Doesn't look like there's anything else. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Stu, for hosting today's webinar. I'll be sending out a copy of the presentation and full contact details for Stuart to you all later on this afternoon. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope you can join us again same time next week, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.